We had that yesterday. Hello, everybody. Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and book all about helping women earn more, live better. I think this is the first time I've been wearing a hat on our lives, which means I'm very tired. Certainly no time for hair today. I'm so jazzed to introduce you all to Sarah Ng, who is a lifelong multi-hyphenator. She is a coach, entrepreneur, software engineer who loves to help other multi-hyphenated curious women in tech get more. And what we're going to be talking about today is basically how do we expand our mind to imagine possibilities for all different kinds of career paths. And then, of course, how do you actually go after them? So I have a feeling we may dive into some pivot stuff. And I've challenged Sarah, as I challenge all of the folks that I have come on these lives with me, to just try to give as tangible as takeaways as possible. But if you've been watching these lives, which by the way, we're simultaneously streaming on the Ladies Get Paid LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube channels. If you've watched these before, you know I love stories. So I would love to actually begin Sarah's story of just how, multi-hyphenator means you've probably gone in a couple of different directions. How did you get into coaching, and what do you love about what you do?
Yeah, I counted before this call. I've had 22 jobs, 22 different pivots. I was like, okay, I'm 35. What happened? And so it started with, I was an English major, and simply because a professor was like, hey, you're pretty good at this. And I was like, I love compliments. Let's go do this. And I didn't really know what the next step was going to be. I didn't want to be a teacher. I liked writing, so I did that a bit, but I didn't have a game plan there. And then I went into, I was a virtual receptionist for a while. I was working in insurance. I was a dumpling maker on a food truck. And then I worked in insurance. And I found this path of should I go to grad school to be a therapist and pay an enormous sum of money in the US to be a therapist and also be landlocked to a certain state? Or I could be a software engineer. So I ended up going down that path, spent 10 years in startups, consultancies, working as an engineer. And I found that the best part of what I did, I always wanted to be a manager, an engineering manager. And leading teams, specifically the coaching part, was the best part. And I was really lucky to have this diverse team of wonderful people. I was like, why don't I just extract out from all my career pivots, but specifically the one as a manager, how do I just take the coaching part and help people realize their potential? So that's how I got here.
I love it. And now I'm hungry for dumplings. So thanks for that.
They were good. There were vegetable ones, chicken. I think there was a mushroom one, truffle before it became popular.
I'm curious. Yeah. So with everybody I invite on for these lives, I always say, what are you feeling most excited to talk about? What do you want to focus on? And now, understanding your story a little bit better, I see why you said you wanted to focus on helping folks imagine different career paths or possibilities. Talk to me about, how do we begin with that? Maybe there's somebody you've coached before who came to you with either no clue with what they wanted to do, or maybe they were thinking pretty rigidly and you could see that there was something different or more for them. But yeah, why pick this subject, and how can we begin to wrap our minds around it?
Yeah, it's a great prompt. I think when we just imagine possibilities, there's this sense of hope, this real embodiment of oh, what else could there be? Going from this feeling of being, I'm so drained, I don't know what's next. I am stuck in this merry-go-round of what could be. And so I really like this possibility. I mean, this possibility of there's all these different ways that we could be. And so, I mean, I was just looking at the Google Trends, how you see what people are searching for. And one of the top things that people are searching for is, why am I so tired? And it just is so resonant. And also, I just feel so many of my clients right now are coming and being I'm stuck. I'm feeling really drained. I want to be present, with my loved ones, with myself, but I don't really know how to do that. And so examples of this, I mean, one of my favorites is someone who came to me and they're I had a really let me censor myself, crappy job
Mhm.
experience. And I don't know how to get out of this vicious cycle of how I could show up in a more positive way or just feel really good and powerful in my job. And they ended up, I mean, it's a perfect embodiment of like navigating like your career on your own terms, which is what I coach on. And so they ended up not going back to the same type of role, and they ended up founding their own business. And I just thought that was like such a cool example of there's this possibility that wasn't in even the realm of what they were coming to for coaching, but ended up being super energizing. They figured out how to do it in the way that they wanted. I love that.
Mhm. For somebody who is maybe stuck in a very binary view of their career and their life, there's a right way, a wrong way. There's a term called the tyranny of the shoulds, right? All the
Mhm.
things they should or shouldn't be doing. How do you get them out of that?
Yeah, shoulds are, I feel like it's like a Pac-Man monster chasing us around. It's okay, what I would do and what I have clients do is list out what those shoulds are. So for example, like my example as an entrepreneur right now is I should be working 9 to 5. I was like, okay, where did that come from? Let's get like really curious about why I think that is the best way to work and specifically why that should work for me. Why is that like the way I should be working? So writing down a list of those without judgment, because there's going to be more than one. I mean, like, here's everything that I'm thinking right now that I should be doing that is best for me. And then going, okay, like after 5 or 10 minutes of doing that, being like, with each one of these, where is that coming from? Where is that should? Why is it a should? And then figuring out if that really works. Like it could, maybe 9 to 5 is the best schedule for somebody, but maybe it's actually like mine is 11 to 8 right now, and
Mhm.
also taking plenty of breaks for
Yeah.
like gym and coffees. And so examining those and then figuring out the next steps beyond that of what else, what else could it look like for me?
Mhm. Mhm. Have you seen anybody make drastic change from based off of when they
Yeah.
question the shoulds?
Yeah. Someone left their PhD, moved countries, the same person. So
Mhm.
left their PhD that they were like, this is what smart people do. And so many smart people do this, but this is the route that I'm supposed to take. And this is how people will like see that I'm valuable. And so this person ended up leaving academia, going into industry and doing a career in tech and finding, okay, the things that they really valued were like making an impact, especially in like in the sustainability sector. And so going after those things and not being like, let me wait for 5 years and not earn an income and let me get started right away and do that. And I just want to say like that binary thinking like is so hard to get out of, especially if maybe it's the way we've grown up. It's definitely the way I've grown up.
Yeah.
Our surroundings, everybody else is thinking like that. Maybe we don't have necessarily the means in terms of resourcing. So I think it's recognizing that it is difficult and it takes time and it's going like, what is it, uphill?
Mhm.
But there are definitely like tactical strategies of how to examine that and move forward.
Awesome. You just led yourself to my next question, which is what are those
Yeah.
tactical, first steps? So let's say it's also somebody who, okay, I have an inkling that it's this direction. My counsel is always, let's try to get as much information about that before you
Mm,
make a definitive decision. Um, Oftentimes it's talking to another person who either has that job or has created that company and asking them
totally.
quite simply, what do they not like about what they do?
Yeah.
Like what's really hard. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm curious for you, yeah, what are the kind of next steps after the first step of opening your mind?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I like to think of it. So my master's was in UX, which is heavily based on design thinking. So there's these steps of experimentation. And so there's a couple steps, and I build on this on my framework of, okay, let's first figure out like what I really care about. Should I talk about it from I or you? From what I really care about. And then it's okay, let me go experiment and like you said, let me go talk to people and see what is this job really like? What are the pain points? How do I even get into this industry? Like let's learn about all those stories. And then from there, it's how do we experiment? And actually, it's first, how do we create like a prototype or an MVP, minimal viable product, of what is like the smallest thing that we could put out there and see if I really like it. Because it's possible. Like I told this story recently about how I went and became a chocolatier for 2 days and thought that, oh my God, I'm going to become Willy Wonka and I'm going to eat chocolate and make chocolate. And then it was not for me, but cool. I experimented and tried it out. And so experimenting with, okay, we're not necessarily going to devote all our money, all our resources, years thinking about this. Like, let's just try it. And you've got you. And you can always go back and you can always pivot. It's always possible. And so trying out that little bit, that prototype, experimenting, getting like really curious about what works and what doesn't. Maybe it's like, oh, I didn't like all that people interaction. I actually liked more heads down work. Or I really love spreadsheets more than maybe like doing UX and making wireframes. I'm sure there's someone who enjoys that. And then it's putting it out there and seeing, that's why I call it start with hello coaching, of that step of like getting out there and telling people and being like, not being so precious about it and saying, okay, I'm going to tell someone, I'm going to be brave and be vulnerable and say, this is not the perfect step and product of myself out there, but I just want to see what support and me putting it out there can get.
I love that. And something that was said yesterday during our job seeker support group was this, and I was interviewing David Fano, who's the founder of Teal, which is a career growth platform.
Yeah.
And he's a real sort of job search specialist. And he said that he finds a lot of folks struggle with the belief that career decisions are, quote, permanent, right? So that they end up being in this like paralysis by analysis. I guess that goes back to the binary thinking of there's a right or a wrong way. How do you know though when the MVP is over, like when to call it for yourself in either direction?
Ooh. I don't know if
it's
over.
Personal. And by the way, obviously this is all very personal decisions, but maybe some prompts or ways that we can kind of guide ourselves into evaluating if the move is right for us.
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind. Is that one, I don't know if there is a way to be like, this is the final product, I'm done, I have found the final thing. I think it's always creating an MVP and designing different ways that we could test things and move closer to what we want. And so I think that is actually a really good thing, of like being able to test those things. But I think in terms of like, okay, I want to put something out there, what is the smallest iota of a thing that I could do? I think part of it comes down to time boxing. Like, okay, I'm going to try this. What's the like quickest and dirtiest thing? Like I am a founder. And so in creating a startup, a lot of time it's like limited resources. We got to move fast. So let's time box this. What can we do in a week? What's the thing that I could just test if I like this, or talking to this amount of people and putting it out there, having like 3 conversations. And so really working on like, okay, here's a time frame. This is the smallest thing. Let's see what I can learn from this.
Yeah, I want to actually focus on the timing piece, because I was coaching somebody yesterday who has an idea for a company she wants to create. She's also applying for other jobs. She also still has a current job. So she has to really manage her time properly. And it's very, very hard to figure out how much energy to put into each bucket when you have competing priorities effectively, right? So maybe for the person who, well, A, any thoughts based off of that, but B, for the person who is kind of putting off the soul stuff, like they're not they're prioritizing the paycheck because they need to, but also they know that there's work to be done to pivot, because that's going to fill their cup, right? Fill their soul, but that always gets the back burner somehow. So how do you prioritize that time? It's kind of juggling short-term versus long-term in a sense.
Did you just answer your own question?
Say it again.
Oh, I was joking. I was like, you just answered your own question.
Oh, yeah.
But I got you. Okay. So for the first one, I would say, and the question is like, how do I juggle all these buckets. Like, I want to have my own startup. I also have my job. Like, I have so many things going on. And so I think it's prioritizing, figuring out like what is the thing that is one, like most important right now, and figuring out ways to do that. For example, as a founder, like one of the things that you can do, or as an entrepreneur really, is like, okay, there's unlimited tasks that someone can do. And how do we divvy those things up? For example, one day could be like outreach day, one day could be content day. So for this client, like, could we divvy it up as in this day gets a startup focus and like creating that idea? The second day gets this focus. Either allotting it that way or being like, you know what, I really want to run with this startup idea. Let me focus on that and give that high priority. Maybe that gets 2/3 of the time. And then your second question was, oh, okay. So if someone I am bogged down with my day to day, and I know there's this thing in the background. Like, I was just talking to someone who has their own candle making business. And so someone dreams of making their own candles and they know that they want to have their own business. But at the end of the day, like after they've been staring at the computer screen, they're like, that's not the thing that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, one, figure out the smallest thing that you can do to keep showing up, because so much of it is about consistency, and it is a marathon and not just a sprint, which is the biggest cliche. But showing up for yourself, what is the smallest thing? Because if you make it insurmountable and there's like a laundry list, 5 things that need to be done every day, like after working 8+ hours a day, that's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And so what is the smallest thing? And that could even be like, okay, I'm going to send one email and tell one person, or I'm going to design like the logo for this, which can be done with AI now. And also like, what are the hacks of doing that? But then another thing I would suggest is looking at things that bring that person energy. So maybe at the end of the workday, it's like, I don't really want to be in a bunch of meetings because I just did that. But maybe it's really energizing to be creative and make those candles or have another outlet, a way to like use our brain in some other ways. And so figuring out, okay, is there something else that could energize me that could still feed my soul?
I think that's so key. Sometimes we feel like in order to accomplish something, we need to like be working on that thing. But in fact, an easier way to accomplish it is to do something completely different that will just get us inspired again.
Yeah. And I've worked with people recently who someone was like, oh, I really like to, let me change the hobby a little bit, to knit. And then they're like, but now I need to knit like 10 sweaters. And then they're like, okay, a week later, they're like, well, I was like, how's knitting? You love knitting. And they're like, well, I stopped knitting. I had to make 10. It was like way too much. And so being really kind to ourselves and taking those expectations, maybe that we have from work, and transferring them over, but just removing that and allowing for more play. So then we can really enjoy that thing and have it be an outlet.
Yeah. I also think that speaks to the pressure to monetize, that we feel like anything we do, we have to earn income from. So I'm actually curious, in your experience, whether it's personal or with folks that you've coached, who are imagining career possibilities, like when should it be a career versus a hobby?
Oh, I mean, that's
again a personal
tough
decision.
question. Yeah. Maybe I can talk about my personal experience, because I think it depends with clients instead of like a blanket experience. A hobby versus money. I mean, a relation, as you know, I mean, you founded Ladies Get Paid. The relationship to money can be like so tenuous or just interesting because there's so many different factors and emotions that go into it. For myself, I think about what I want to get out of that thing. For me, coaching has been the best thing that I can do, that I do. And the only way to make that sustainable for me is to make a living out of it, to have money, to be able to do that. And so I looked at it that way. But there's certainly things like I had a podcast before, or I used to host strangers and have them come over for potlucks. It's called the Slow Friendship Project. And those things didn't have money. It was just for fun and things that yeah, I wanted other people to be able to experience without money being attached, an expectation.
Yeah. What about for the person who is ready to dive in? This looks like a pretty sizable pivot. And I don't know if you work with the folks who need to now tell the story of transferable skills and strengths.
Yep.
Because there's the one thing of like, you believe you're ready for it, but how do you show somebody else that you are? How do you convince them to take a chance on you? And oftentimes there's like a transition period, right? Like you got to bridge the gap. You have to give yourself experience. The irony of you need 5 years experience for an entry level job. So how do you do? Is this something you tackle in your coaching?
Yes, it's a big part. So I'll talk about my personal experience and then I'll cite some stories of past clients too. So my background was I was an English major and then I went into software engineering. How did I get someone to give me a chance? I emailed a bunch of people for coffee. I was in Austin, Texas for 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to find a job. It's over 10 years ago now. And I said, well, I've career changed, but I have gumption. And it happened that my future boss really liked the word gumption, but I communicated like why I had that. Like, here's a demonstration of that. Like I gave myself a one-way ticket to Austin, gave myself this time frame, rented a car and drove all over for these coffee meetings because I took a chance on myself. And I am willing to do that at your startup because I need to juggle a lot of hats and I can really go after things and I'm resourceful. And so taking those qualities and being like, here's how I can help your business is really helpful to be like, know your audience, like communicate to them why that's really important. And so examples of, let me think of a recent example. It's someone who was in product management and is looking to move into HR. And also, I recently was working on a startup for an AI career companion, and there were a lot of mothers are like the best at multitasking, like holding down a bunch of stuff, like seeing the roadmap like way ahead of time and being like, eye on the prize, let me eliminate the obstacles. Like, we're going to get us there. And so like, that is like the best product manager a company could ask for. Honestly, like that's what product managers do. Plus the communication and like wrangling all the different stakeholders. And so being able to communicate, okay, here are the things that I'm pulling out from my experience. And this is why it matters to you and how I can help you. And this is how I stand out from someone who has a traditional background, because I can bring like this richness and vibrancy. And this will be such an asset.
So funny because I was just talking to somebody yesterday who is in recruiting who wants to go into product management.
Yeah, I think there's, someone who's a recruiter is really great at talking to people, seeing that potential ahead of time, and then like being like, here is the right fit. So in product, it'd be like identifying features, being able to talk to people about what's the most important thing, communicating timelines. You probably said all this, but there's a lot of different things that you can make a case for. It's just a matter of pulling those out and then practicing those.
Yeah. What about doing free? I don't know, not free. This is kind of what we talked about in the job seeker support group of, if you don't have the experience, you have to, and no one's willing to pay you to do the thing. Volunteering, side hustles, whether it's creating your own or participating in somebody else's, like there is a value exchange, and value is not just defined in money. But I am curious to hear your thoughts on that. And also at what point, we really actually do undervalue our experience.
Yeah. When I first started software engineering, like my default was I need to get an internship. I was like, even though I was in my late 20s, I was like, yeah, who's going to pay me for this? Like, I'm not experienced enough. And so I had a career coach actually at that time who was like, actually, like you have the skills right now. And I'm so glad that she pushed me to go out there. And so I took that allotted amount of time, like looked at my runway and was like, okay, this amount of months, like this is how long I could like really go after it. So I would say as a default, like bet on yourself and reach out and ask people to take a chance on you and explain why. But I
Mhm.
think also, I think it's important to, if that person is finding, okay, I do have downtime, or I'm really interested in this project or nonprofit collaborating with people, I think it's a great way to also build up skills and show, okay, I'm really interested in this particular aspect or this particular cause and showcasing that. But I think people can kind of have this inertia of like, let me build up all of this stuff and then I'll feel ready or then I'll look prepared. And I would say it's actually more important to reach out to people and have those conversations.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm realizing we're actually pretty close to time. So
Oh,
anything
that's
else you
fast.
haven't? Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Is there anything that you haven't yet shared that you feel like is important for people to know, whether it relates to this subject of sort of opening your mind to career possibilities or anything else that you specialize in?
Yeah. So I was just thinking about, so I have a podcast where I interview strangers about breakups and how they evolve. And I was thinking, job career pivoting, like trying something new is a lot like going through a breakup in some way. Like it is
Uh-huh.
not always easy and like, wow, this is my new love. Like it's actually can be really hard and painful. And so I think acknowledging that it is a process and there are down days where it's like, oh, I don't want to leave my bed or talk to anybody about this. But I think it's our way of protecting ourselves and being like, okay, I just want to keep myself safe. So recognizing that and making it more the norm, I think is really important. And knowing that, like a breakup, we get over these things and learn from them and evolve. And then there's another side.
I love it. Also, I absolutely adore that you have that podcast. If you could do
It's a
business
pleasure.
breakups too, right? You could do people leaving their company.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally morphs into that. How can people find you, follow you, and most importantly, pay you?
Yes, come find me. I'm at Sarah Ing Coaching. So SARAHING Coaching. And that's on LinkedIn, Instagram. My website is saraingcoaching.com, where you can read what it's like to work with me and reach out. Just message me and maybe put hello, because it's called Start with Hello. And yeah, I'm
Okay,
here for
love
you.
it. And by the way,
Thanks,
for those who
Claire.
are watching on our YouTube and Facebook channels, come on over to the Ladies Get Paid LinkedIn page because Sarah's going to be popping in right underneath the recording and putting in those links so you can connect with her directly. Of course, follow us at Ladies Get Paid everywhere on social, but also ladiesgetpaid.com/subscribe. That's our newsletter. Great tips in there, but also invites to upcoming events. Tomorrow, we're interviewing somebody. I'm
I'll be
interviewing
there.
somebody. Well, you know what? I'm pregnant with twins, so now I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
we're all here.
Aw, the three
Um,
of you.
yeah, the three of us will be interviewing Genevieve Anderson, and she's a financial wellness coach. So we've been doing lots of career stuff, but we're going to do a little pivot to money stuff. And of course,
Love
find
it.
me on LinkedIn at Claire Wasserman or on Instagram at Claire Gets Paid. Thank you, Sarah, so much. That's also my middle name, and you spell it the same way. So it's
The
fun to,
best way.
yes, the best way. Sorry at all. We're still inclusive of everyone else, but yes, Sarah, best of luck. Now go get paid. Stay well.
Thanks, Claire. See you later.
Bye.